She didn't whisper it, she threw it into the smoke. "You're no fun." The words hung over the fire pit and drifted to the fence where he leaned, a grin asking for permission it didn't need. He glanced at her, then at me, and said, "I am." I didn't answer. I watched the flame fall and listened to the pop of sap. She spun the brass compass on her keychain, the way she does when she's planning, the needle twitching north and back. "Well, this weekend," she said, still spinning. "Sparp State, surprise opening, I'm going." Lee chuckled like he'd been handed his secret. Spontaneity, that's the good stuff. It would have been easy to make a scene. Instead, I nodded. "Take the car," I said. "Roads are dark." It came out flat, the voice I use when a river is 1 inch from changing its mind. She didn't notice. Her eyes were already beyond me, out where service gets thin and stories get convenient. She packed fast, no ceremony, just a zipper and the clatter of toiletries. The compass flashed in the hall as she passed, a wink of brass that felt like a tell. Lee lingered at the fence, pretending to fix a board, pretending not to listen. "Back Sunday," she called, voice bright like a weather app. The car door thudded, the engine started, and tail lights drew 2 red lines across the lawn. I stayed by the fire until it sank to coals. Smoke stitched into my sweatshirt. The compass tiny metal on key still echoed in the hallway, a fountain sound. Lee finally straightened, gave me a 2-finger salute, and slipped through his gate. The phone lit twice, calendar reminder, hotel confirmation. Her name, my card. The preview read, service might be spotty. We weren't fighting. This was worse, performance without audience. I rinsed my hands and caught my reflection in the dark window. Behind me, the compass lay where she'd set it while digging for gum, a stubborn coin pointing nowhere I trusted. I nudged it. The needle swung, stalled, then crept back to north. Lee's laugh floated over once more, too loud now that the yard was empty of her. I clicked the deadbolt. Not fear. Preference. If he wanted to measure the distance, he could do it from his side. What I felt wasn't jealousy. Jealousy is hot and brittle. This was cooler, a controlled burn that eats only what you feed it. I fed it caution. I replayed the sequence, her line, his echo, the compass, the sudden need for wellness. Maybe I was unkind. Maybe a body craves stillness so hard it runs to the first place that looks like it. But the timing had that glossy, sponsored feel I distrust. I walked the rooms once, not to check locks, but to log absence, her half-drunk seltzer, the book open to a page of underlines with no notes, a scarf kept for photos. I just did nothing. In the quiet, I heard the note I'd been stepping over, not just that she'd become distant, but that she wanted it noticed. It reads better. It turns personal accountability into plot. And if you're running a story, you need a straight man who holds still. I wasn't angry. Anger scatters. I needed everything to land in one place. I poured water over the last orange coal and listened to it hiss out. When the steam cleared, I pocketed the compass, felt the cool circle settle in my palm, and told myself I'd return it when directions muttered again. On the counter, the hotel confirmation blinked once more, a small lighthouse promising rest to whoever claimed it. "Have fun," I said to the empty room. Then, softer, to myself, "I will." Secrecy didn't blow in, it in the room 1 notch at a time. Her phone started to be face down. She used to leave it unlocked on the armrest, now her thumb paused at the corner and a new passcode slid in under the table edge. "Just a work thing," she said, rolling the brass compass like a coin. The needle twitch steadied, and she set it down with a care that felt rehearsed. The doorbell app pinged twice before breakfast, then stopped showing previews. I hadn't changed anything. In settings, alerts were tagged muted by another admin. We only had 2 admins. I let it stand, unmade coffee, listening for tells, steps slowing before corners, a breath held over the keyboard, a smile faltered away the moment I entered. At noon she called from the car, engine idling. She asked what I wanted for dinner. I said anything. "You should pick," she replied, voice practicing cheerful. Somewhere under it, a blinker clicked. The compass stayed on the tray by the door, a witness. Lee's routine shifted in the way only a neighbor notices. His jog moved at that early hour that makes birds suspicious. At 5:30, he stretched by his mailbox, eyes on his watch like he was thinking with a signal I couldn't hear. He gave a half wave, more reflex than greeting. That evening she swung by to grab a sweater. The passcode choreography was crisp, full out, tilt away, shoulder turn, smile fixed. "Forgot something," she said, moving through rooms like a guest who knew every drawer. She touched the compass, gave it a spin, watched the needle chase itself before settling at north. Back late, she added, and let the door catch itself. I began a small inventory not of objects, but of edits. Her calendar traded full titles for single letters. The shared shopping list sprouted duplicates and then she erased them, like someone revising. The Home Hub logged a voice not recognized around dawn. Our photo account announced a new device, and seconds later that sharing had been paused to the household. Squint, and it looked like normal life with tighter privacy. Stop squinting, and it looked curated. I told myself to be generous. Distance can be scary if it shrinks. I left the doorbell settings alone and set my phone on the counter, screen up, unlocked a mirror. It felt like placing a glass of water between two people and seeing who drinks. She glanced once, then looked past me to the window, as if it had just offered her an exit. Near midnight, the street took its long breath. I walked the fence line and counted my steps so I wouldn't count theirs. The least porch light was off, but the room behind it glowed, a page held to a lamp. I wasn't hunting. I was measuring where the light fell and where it refused to. Back inside, I lifted the compass. It doesn't point out people. It tells one truth and does so without flattery. I set it next to the silence chime, so when the house swallow previews a needle would still insist on direction. The place felt newly edited, like someone had gone through our life with a blue pencil, crossing out anything that compromised the draft. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I wanted to see if the edits would continue tomorrow or if the page would freeze once it realized I was reading. Secrecy rarely announces itself, it keeps dimming until brightness feels like myth. I chose to sit in the half-light and learn its shape, letting the devices ours, not mine, do what devices do best, remember without caring who gets credited for the story. The first clue didn't arrive as a confession, it arrived as a product feature. My phone stitched a memory I hadn't asked for 30 seconds of doorbell clips with canned music. It popped up while I was rinsing a mug. One tap and the porch appeared at 5:42 a.m., grainy blue. She stepped into frame, hood up, moving light. The brass compass bounced against her keys and flashed once. She didn't bounce back, her eyes were on her screen, thumb quick, face neutral. Off camera and engine idles low, steady. The lens caught a sliver of fender, grey, generic, familiar. The music swelled like a commercial promising easy mornings. Pause at second 9 and her breath shows before the last step, not fear, not rush. She angles to the curb, opens the passenger door, and slips beyond the camera's patience. The door closes with the soft thud cars make when everything fits. The clip ends on an empty porch and a wind chime that barely admits movement. Explainable. Rides exist. Retreats schedule early check-ins. Grey trucks multiply whenever you're looking for them. I rolled anyway, thumb sliding the timeline until the app threw up a reminder to take a break. I saved the clip, then saved it again to a folder that doesn't sync, labelled with the date and the first letter of her spa. I wasn't collecting evidence. I was collecting context in case the story decided to mislead me again. But I knew the cloud offered more. It proposed highlights you might like: the porch at 5:43, the driveway at 5:44. Same facts shuffled. On the lost still, the compass lay on the top step where it must have dropped a needle up north, casing catching the first slice of sun. She scooped it up without breaking stride. I zoomed until the pixels gave out and the compass became a block of light. I drafted a message, then left it unsent. Everything okay? It reads needy, you left early, reads accusation. I deleted the draft and set the phone face up. In the black glass I saw the hallway where she'd called me no fund and the notch in the trim we cut moving a dresser. Some dents introduce themselves, others wait for a question. A notification stacked over the clip, new device added to shared library. A breath later, sharing paused to household. Doors opening, then locked behind. I took a screenshot. Habit. Temporary, I told myself. When Ollie jogged past, he lifted his knees like he was being watched. He looked at the porch camera, then away, then back with a small I see you half smile. He stretched beside the mailbox longer than the run required. When he noticed me on the stoop, he greeted with his chin instead of his hand, a small gesture, easy to retract. Evening cooled the street. I put the compass on the counter where keys go, to be honest, and set a glass beside it. The ring spread until it touched the metal and stopped. Objects don't pick sides, they just tell the one truth. I wiped the ring and turned the compass so north faced the door. A climate video isn't proof, it's a mirror with a lazy memory. But mirrors still return something, even at a bad angle. I let the clip play again and watched her carry down the steps by music that wasn't hers. Explainable stays useful until it doesn't. For now, I gave the simple story its chance to hold, and filed each minute where charm or noise couldn't edit it. The stronger proof didn't arrive as a message. It appeared on the side of a gas station in a pane of glass. I was topping off the tank on our work run when the station TV cut to weather and went black long enough to become a mirror. Behind me, across 2 pumps, a grey truck idled. She sat in the passenger seat, hood down, hair tucked into a sweatshirt that wasn't ours. His too big at the shoulders. Lee leaned toward her, not touching, but close. She laughed the way people laugh when they think no one knows their name. Then the keychain flashed and she stilled it, fingers closing around the brass compass like it was a bell she didn't want ringing. The needle jerked, then settled north against her palm. He said something I couldn't hear. Her hand hovered above his wrist, not landing, like a promise that needs practice. I didn't step into frame or call. I watched the reflection, the kind that keeps everyone deniable later. The station door swung, the kid shouldered a case of water past me. When I looked back, they were both watching the road, faces smooth, like 2 people waiting for traffic instead of distance to clear. No grand admission. Just choreography tight enough to wear as routine. Acceptance didn't thud into me, it arrived like a table already set. I put the nozzle back, wiped a thin stripe of gas from my fingers with a napkin they leave by the pump, and decided I was done auditioning for warmth. If this was the show, it could run without a note from me. Back in the car, my phone blinked a notification I didn't expect. Shared item added, live photo. I hadn't taken a picture. I swiped, and a tiny loop opened at 2 seconds of them in the truck, the compass swinging once, her mouth forming a half word. The metadata listed her device, captured at the minute I stood by the pump. We have a setting that pushes any image with my face into our shared library. The glass had caught me in reflection behind them, small but recognizable. The system obeyed its rule and delivered it to me. I breathed. The card was no longer hinting, it was participating. I saved the loop to a folder with a drawer name, not a gallery and index. I turned off automatic sharing from my end but left hers alone. Curiosity, not cruelty. I wanted to see whether the story would keep publishing itself if no one shouted titles. To red light, I replayed the clip without sound, then with sound, though there wasn't much beyond ventilation and the soft squeak of a keyring. She looked past the dash like the future had a set pickup time. Ali checked the mirrors as if courtesy could erase proximity. When the light turned green, I didn't follow. I drove to the client, shook hands, answered questions, sent the estimate, and returned to the car with normal in my pocket. That night the doorbell app returned to previews for 1 hour, then went quiet again like someone tested the switch and chose to turn it off. The Home Hub logged a new voice profile, briefly misfiled as mine. It wasn't. The edit tracks were clear, name, time, change, revert. My acceptance grew a spine. It stopped asking what I wanted and started filing what was. I placed the compass on the table and spun it once. The needle toured the room and settled. Direction isn't comfort. It's clarity. I clicked the light off and let the devices keep their vigil. They remember everything and take nothing personally, and tonight that felt like the only fair witness I had. Sticks don't shout, they add weight to small things. The first weight arrived as a PDF that wasn't mine. Our shared cloud pinged a new scan added by her device. I opened it because that's what you do when the house starts speaking. Retainer, 2 pages, her full name, a downtown office, yesterday's date, notary seal. Phrases lined up like dominoes, separate accounts, a temporary occupancy, exclusive use of the residence, interim support, or preserving financial records. In the margin she'd written, "Can this happen quietly?" At the edge of the image, the brass compass lay sideways like a gavel that never dropped. I read it twice. We've had cool months, mismatched schedules, but this wasn't drift. This was a mapped exit lane. The risk wasn't only personal, it was structural. I run a small shop that lives on trust and invoices. If temporary occupancy recasts the house as staging, the office becomes a spare room and my server turns into a bargaining chip I never put on the table. A second sync arrived, consultation notes. A photo of yellow legal pad, change direct deposit, new card, a storage unit, mail forward partial, ask about recorder logs. The compass was there again, anchoring the page, needle pin north like consent. For someone staging secrecy, the devices were painfully honest. The doorbell preview showed a courier leaving a thin envelope, return address matching the letterhead on the PDF. I let the door keep its dignity and picked it up after the taillights were gone. Addressed to her, sealed. I didn't need to open it, the cloud had already told me enough. I made a list that didn't look like panic, audit shared accounts, export books, rotate client passwords, backup photos to a drive that doesn't sync to anyone else's plans. I added a line I never thought I'd write, prepare for temporary occupancy. Then I washed the glass I wasn't drinking from. Running water steadied my hands better than commentary. Ali joked past the window, glanced at the camera, checked his watch, and waved without slowing. I let the wave evaporate on the glass. Inside, the compass cooled the wood by my keyboard. I turned it so north faced the door, then the driveway, then the room where she keeps her carry-on. I didn't send a text. Anything I typed would feed the script in which she tried everything and I refused to grow. Instead, I gave the cloud a minute. It offered one more file, an intake form with checkboxes for children, shared assets, anticipated disputes. Most boxes blank, the timestamp and the attorney's name fully committed. The smart cam added its footnote. In the device log, an unfamiliar voice tag spiked at 6 a.m., then relabeled itself guest. The system apologized with a cheerful banner. I kept the apology and the time. The stakes felt less like a cliff and more like tide. I copied the retainer to a private folder and printed a hard copy because litiges love data. I filed the print out and moved on. Before bed, I set the compass on the nightstand and watched the needles settle. North is one answer. I needed the practical ones, where the exits are, what I can secure without noise, which items look like mine but already carry another signature underneath. I turned my phone face down for the first time in months, not as a mirror but as a door. If another document was waiting, it could wait for morning. The risk had already stepped through and taken a chair at my desk, hands folded, patient as a clerk. Presto arrived with drummels, they show up in familiar clothes. Mine came from a folder I forgot we shared. Years ago we made an album called The Lights, Piccadilly, and I strung winter bulbs along the eaves and took photos. That old folder still had published rights I never revoked. Her phone pushed a new file into it at 3:18 p.m, a voice memo. The thumbnail was a line of little mountains, blue and grey. I tapped. Traffic droned under everything. Then Ali's voice, closer and hurried, he'll be fine. And then the echo I knew too well, him again, lower, the same fence line delivery from the night she told me I wasn't fun, I am. No names. Just geometry. The car turn signal ticked. Fabric creaked as he shifted. A small knock whistle on plastic, then her voice, distant, she had the compass. The word wasn't for me. I pictured it swing from her finger while she watched a road she'd already mapped. The memo ran 12 seconds, cut clean, saved by her device into an album with my name on it because an old permission forgot to stand down. It would be easy to say I felt rage. I didn't. Rage is noisy and bends the story toward itself. What I felt was a correction, like a level finding flat. Lee wasn't just a neighbour, he was the person who kept our spare key, who helped lift the bookcase and joked about my measuring twice. We watched the same play of collapse here. He brought over a lopsided pie. That closeness was the twist, not the chalk. I replayed the memo with headphones. Traffic, the ticking, her breath quick on the first second, even by the 10th. No apology tucked between them, no hesitation I could pretend into meaning. It wasn't distance happening in a rush, it was staging. Tape marks on the floor, cues practice until they looked natural. The devices weren't betraying anyone, they were simply honest enough to remember. I saved the file twice. I exported a transcript, stamped the time, noted the source path /out/album/lights and the way the cloud called me contributor. I made a folder titled with the date like a tax audit. I'm not a collector of pain, I'm a careful reader. If the story later tried to mislead, I wanted the text. I checked the Home Hub history again. A guest voice had asked for my playlist at dawn. It played 4 minutes and stopped. The doorbell log showed 2 silhouettes after sunrise, faces tilted away from the camera with rehearsed care. Acceptance hardened from idea to method. No speeches. No scenes. Just records. On the desk the compass lay where I'd left it, the needle steady like a small metronome for decisions. I set it on a blank page, traced a circle around it, and wrote one word at the top, orientation. That's what this was, finding north when a map gets redrawn by someone else's hand. I didn't call Lee. I didn't text her. Words would only furnish a room they'd already rented. I lined passwords, mirrored drives, and drew boundaries on paper with dates and signatures instead of feelings. When the memo ended, I let the silence return, not as punishment, just as climate. By dark the folder held the memo, the transcript, and a screenshot of the album path. Evidence, yes, but more than that, a compass pointing away from wishful thinking. The betrayal wasn't dramatic, it was patient. Next door, a person who'd held the spare key. I slipped the compass into my pocket. It tugged at the seam, heavy for its size. Direction had arrived, and it wasn't toward them. No showdowns. Morning broke plain, and I left it. I made a short list of the practicals only. The brass compass sank at the page. North was my one indulgence. First call counsel, a referral for dull emergencies. She answered on the second ring, disclaimers steady, questions precise. I read dates without heat, porch clips, the live photo autos saved to our library, the memo, the retainer scan I never signed, the home hub mislabeling aghast me. If you're filing, she said, file before the story writes itself. She sent a secure link. I uploaded, labeled, and watched a clean timeline assemble where my patients used to be. While she drafted, I handled the bank. New cards. Calls on automatic transfers. Printed statements. The manager clicked through with the careful boredom that keeps lights on. Travelled, he asked. Realignment, I said. He nodded and stamped. Back home, the printer hummed a low, unbothered song. Pages arrived face down, crisper than the days they described. I initialed margins, filed exhibits, unstacked everything in stranger proof order. The compass kept the pile honest, the needle steady even when the vent exhaled. We filed at 2:11 p.m. A case number arrived with the dryness all true things carry. I added the date to my calendar with a plain title. Counsel prepared service packets, one for her, one for Ellie. The letter to him wasn't a tantrum, it set workplace boundaries and noted that any future contact would be recorded per policy. No accusations, no adjectives. Her packet needed no detective work. The resort address sat at the bottom of the confirmation she'd put on my card. I chose a stiff envelope, slid in copies, and called a courier. He scanned. I initialed in a box the width of my first name. The doorbell looked his exit. My phone lit with her name, the circle measuring a ring I wouldn't answer. Voicemail took it. Another call, shorter. A text, can we talk? The DOS pulse vanished, returned, vanished. I sent one reply, PDF of the filings and a line received by courier today. No editorial, no rope for rehearsal. An hour later, Lee, is there a misunderstanding? I sent the same packet and a sentence about the boundary at work. His reply remained 3 dots that died on their way to language. Clarity flat in small talk. The bank pinged, changes confirmed. The cloud pinged, delivery signed at the resort desk. The home hub noted 2 read receipts from phones that used to borrow our Wi-Fi. I moved the documents to a drive that doesn't ask permission to remember and put the drive in a box labelled with today's date. I returned to ordinary tasks not as distraction, but as proof I still own my hours. I answered a vendor, sent a proposal, scheduled pickup of archived media. No speeches, just signatures. The compass rode in my pocket, a small tug at the seam each time I stood, less comfort than rule. Evening cooled and the house returned to its original square footage. I poured water, watched it settle, and turned my phone face down, not in secrecy but in policy. If another message arrived, the packet already spoke for me. The strike didn't thunder. It settled like frost, quiet, complete, already across the lawn. When the phone vibrated again, I let it finish and didn't measure the seconds. The season had changed, commentary wouldn't warm it.